I believe it is time we have an authentic conversation about where education is heading. And today we're going to talk about the colossal failure of Bootcamp, Lambda School, whatever next name change they're going to make. And do not get me started for the fact that these guys don't even have any reviews on their Facebook page. It's absolutely insane. But what this is going to authentically be about is what education is in the first place. Boot camps were created as an alternative means to say, hey, you don't need to go to college. And guess what? This costs a fraction of the price, but somehow, somewhere, someone decided to start charging tens of thousands of dollars, and it starts at Lambda School, who now is suddenly Bootcamp. Maybe it's because all of these insane legal allegations start coming out. So what I'm going to switch over now is to talk about an actual article about a class action lawsuit filed against Bootcamp. And this is where we see the first problem with Lambda School. This is where we see the biggest first problem. They made these massive assumptions. If you come join us, we'll guarantee you a job. We'll guarantee you a job in coding. But what you really see behind the terms and conditions is a lot of bullshit that they're catching to really bring you in on this idea of the income share agreement. And this is where it all starts at. So I'm going to transition over right now, and we're going to look at this. Right? So I'm on businessinsider.com, and we have some additional stuff we're going to go through in just a moment. It's 4 students at the coding camp Bootcamp Institution of Technology, formerly known as Lambda School. They've changed their names quite a bit. Have filed a class action lawsuit against the school. For a short period of time, the school, known as Bootcamp for short, offers students the option to pay upfront tuition or to pay no upfront tuition fees and instead pay back at their tuition through an income share agreement. Meaning, once the student lands a job paying $50,000 or more, they must pay back 14% of their income for 4 years or until they hit a cap of $40,000. See, here's what makes it interesting. There's no stipulations in there for what your job is. If you get a job working at the gas station down the corner, you have to pay. And this is where things get really rough. Right? So this is their income share agreement. See, DevSlips could have blown up even more. We could have jumped our revenue into the tens of millions extremely quickly if I would have just made the immoral decision to start accepting income share agreements. And I didn't. Why? Because it's not fair. I've had the conversations with all of the loan teams that offer these income share agreements. And do you know what their moral right is? They charge 2.5 times the price of the tuition to essentially make everything back. It's insane. So instead of charging $9,900 or $10,000, they charge $25,000. Or in the circumstance of some horrific program like Bootcamp, who's supposed to be the better alternative to college, they charge you, look right there, $50,000 fucking dollars. This is absolutely insane what they're doing here. Now, I know right here it specifically says, or you get a job paying $50,000 a year. But when we come over to this lawsuit, $40,000. Guys, this is insane, the world that we're getting into. The entire purpose of vocational schools stepping up to help the average American is to provide this kind of support. Because guess what? The only people that can even afford to go to Lambda School or Bootcamp, whatever name we want to call them now, are individuals who, dare I say, came from privileged households. Their program is 6 months long, 6 to 7 days a week. You have to completely be able to uproot your life. You cannot have any responsibilities. You cannot have a job. You cannot, if you have kids, there's no chance, right? Otherwise, they're just going to charge you more for cost of living expenses. I believe they have a dorm you could live at, right? The only people who can go to a program like this are 18 to 20-year-olds. And what makes this even worse is I know a decent amount of individuals who have gone to these programs. They get all the way to the very end where they can qualify for the refund that they talk about in the program. And the worst part is if you missed 1 or 2 days longer than the expected missed days, you miss out on everything. The entire premise of programs like this at Bootcamp or these large boot camps is that they build extremely specific terms and conditions. And those terms and conditions are to be held against you, right? They say, okay, if you show up late more than 10 to 15 times, right? Let's just say it's 10 to 15. If you show up late more than 10 to 15 times, no refund available, and we have the ability to drop you from the program. And that's for a couple reasons. Take a moment. Why would they build in terms and conditions so carefully? The reason why is because how they market their program. The way they market their program is we have an 87% job placement rate. We have a 98% job placement rate. We have a 60% job placement rate. The truth of the matter, education does not have high placement rates. Why am I telling you that? The CEO of a large software engineering vocational school. Why would I tell you this? Because guess what? You can't get a job if you don't go out and do the work. It is our job as a education school to provide you with the education and the resources you need to have that success. But I can't just give you God's favor unless you're putting in the work from your side. I'm rational enough to be upfront about that. I'm rational enough to tell you the honest truth. These individuals want to prey on the fact that you most likely do not have the financial skilling or the financial understandings to understand the repercussions of spending $40,000 or having 14% of your income taken home. That's on top of taxes you have to pay. You're going to be losing so much money. So these are students who attended from March 2020 until the present, says the lawsuit. They are attracted by the high job placement rates in tech. Bullshit. They alleged that the school had false and misleading information about job placement rates. Duh. And their CEO, Austin Alfred, right? Bloom Tech is really hard. Really, really hard. It takes hundreds, even thousands of hours to learn and apply the material. Completely agree. Can't disagree with that. My CTO, Peter, yeah, he'd be on board with that. If you want to understand computer science / computing fundamentals and learn how to build productive, ready software, it simply does not fit in a 12-week model. Okay, so here's my problem with this. It doesn't fit in a 12-week model. Realistically, it doesn't fit into a 24-week module as well. Just by upping the program doesn't solve the right of the wrongs that you're doing, right? And this is where all of this comes from. We have a business that joined hands with the university, most likely to be able to accept larger loans from better loan providers. On top of that, they've been using these absolutely disgusting income share agreements. And what's really funny is they've raised so much money. They've raised over $129 million from Google Ventures, Stripes, Ashton Kutcher, all these individuals. And this is what we see here. What we see here is a program that had so much money to spend. They said, let's just throw everything at the window and let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. We don't really need to make money yet, right? We just need to grow. This is where we see the problems taking place. This is where we see it. What ends up happening is these businesses, these schools take in all this funding and they don't need to make money. And then when it comes time for them to make money, they realize, okay, we have to find a way to take advantage of people. So they start using these massive placement rates and using all these amazing things to bring you in. When in reality, by changing your terminology and saying, hey, you can't do it in 12 weeks, but you could do it in 24. Nonsense for the average person. The time to land a job as a software engineer for the average human, you're looking at 16 to 18 months. Absolutely. It's going to take that long. Most likely, you are better off going part-time than trying to go full-time into becoming a software engineer, right? The entire premise of education, why we created vocational schools, is this idea that, okay, while you're trying to learn how to code, keep your job, right? This $40,000 doesn't even factor in the fact that these students had to quit their jobs to go join this school. So not only do they keep taking on all of this additional debt over here, they can't make their student loan payments, they can't make their credit card payments, they can't make whatever payments they have, and then they have to pay for this university. But they say, it's okay. You don't pay us back immediately, right? Pay us back over 4 years. Just pay us back over 4 years and we'll take 13% of your income, right? Think about this, right? And $50,000 is their bare minimum, right? If you're making $50,000, they take 13%. You pay taxes. You are realistically earning $30,000 maybe. If you have a family, you can't do that. Think about the massive growing cost in rent everywhere, the massive growing cost of inflation with groceries, goods, everything across the board. I think it'd be much better to say, hey, let's have an authentic conversation about this. If you want to become a software engineer in 2023 and onwards, this isn't going to take place in 3 months. It's not going to take place in 6 months. This is going to be a 16-month long process. You're going to be required to have to go through the learning process and figure out what you're going to do. Then we need to be able to get you some freelance work, because if you show up to job applications and you just said, I went to a boot camp, and you just submit your application everywhere you go, no one's going to care. Nobody's going to care. Why? Because you look like everybody else. Your portfolio, your GitHub, does look like everybody else. So what you want to do, you're going to go get some freelance work. You're going to take time to develop yourself professionally, right? You need to be able to show them you know how to communicate. Instead, these boot camps follow this premise of we want you in day one, we want you out week 12 or 24, and they don't want to be dealing with you afterwards. There's this famous saying that I absolutely love: you have to earn God's blessing. You have to earn the favor of the gods. What does that mean? You have to show up every single day and put in the work when you don't want to. That's the hard part. And it's really easy for me to sit here and say that. You'd be much more willing to listen to me if we go back in time about 4 years when I was in the same shoes. I had 2 kids. I didn't really know what I was doing. This is before I came to DevSlopes. I started helping at this school. The prolonged path of mastery is the key to you getting a career in software engineering, marketing, sales, anything that you want. And this is the problem. All of these companies are preaching this idea that you're going to get this golden opportunity in 12 or 24 weeks. It's not going to happen. This is going to take 16 to 18 months, because we're aware of the fact that, hey, even if we gave a lot of you the technical skills that you need to be able to start building some software, a lot of the times you're going to be missing in the other areas. You may not have the ability to express your personality. You may not have the ability to know how to sell yourself. You may not have the EQ yet. Maybe there's mental blocks getting in the way. Maybe you don't think you're good enough. Maybe you don't think you deserve it. Maybe you don't think you're smart enough. These are the barriers that typically will prevent you from making that job transition, right? There's a reason why, as ridiculous as it is for me to sit here recording this video in a suit, I take this very seriously. Your ability to build a career in a completely different field, which you have no experience, is incredibly difficult. It is a very long feat. And the only way you could do that is by developing yourself as a person, developing your mental models on life, developing a better emotional playbook for life. Most of you need to move from a place to where you don't feel like you're good enough, you're not smart enough, you're really intimidated, to being courageous, where you're saying, you know what, I am confident in myself. I've been able to learn a handful of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I've been able to get a handful of freelance projects. I believe in myself, right? I'm ready to tackle React. I'm ready to take on more advanced software projects. I'm ready for this. That is the journey. That is the hero's journey you have to go through throughout this entire experience. And the problem is, programs like Lambda, Flatiron School, all of these programs give you this bullshit idea that this is just going to take place in 12 to 24 weeks. It's not going to happen. It takes time. It takes patience, right? You reap what you sow. And guess what? When you're farming, it takes a long time to see that, right? And even when you finish the year actually farming, you have to take care of that field for the next year when it's time to come back and plant your crop. That's what this entire process is like. And that's why moving forward in the future, I've realized it is my job to put the truth out there so that nobody makes the mistake of going to these schools, because we have tens of students in our program who've gone through these schools, who have looked at them and said, actually, we have a handful of them who have enrolled and gone all the way through. And they're like, I couldn't figure it out. Yeah, because you have a professor who's giving you a thumbs up or thumbs down on portfolio projects or even assignments, right? If you're getting pass-fail assignments on all these schools, which they typically do, or they even have you present it in class, that's the problem, right? These schools are not set up for your success. What they are is an initial school who was one of the first schools to come out here. They had a massive amount of success. They had a bunch of funding, but they got too big to where they're now too big to make the big adjustments they need to. They do not have your best interest at heart. And if you don't believe me, continue looking around. And I want to leave you with one specific thought. If you're choosing a school based on the idea that their placement rate is what's going to give you success, you have lost the game. There's a book that I absolutely love. I listen to it almost every single night when I go to bed. It's called The Alchemist. It's about this young boy named Santiago. And he's going through life and he had this dream that there's some treasure he's supposed to go after in Egypt. So he goes to this woman and the woman tells him, she reads his palm. She says, hey, I will help you get to where you need to, right? I will decipher the dream that you had about this treasure, but I want 10%. I want 1/10 of everything that you find. He said, sure, no problem. I'll give you 1/10 of it, no problem, right? He was promising something that he didn't have. He was promising something that he just never even thought of, right? There was no skin in the game for him. And she read his hand and she said, okay, you need to do X, Y, Z. Wherever the pyramids of Egypt are, you need to go there. I don't know where they are. I'm not educated enough. But if you saw that in a dream with a child, you need to go there. So he said, anybody could have told me that. Like, you're not helping me whatsoever. I already knew I needed to do that, but I need instructions on how to do it. So he leaves her. He sits down, and this wise old man comes and sits next to him. And he talks to him, and he tells him things that nobody knew about him. So he knew that this old man had something special. And the old man said, hey, I can help you get to the pyramids of Egypt. But if I'm going to help you, I need you to give me 1/10 of your flock, right? So he had a flock of sheep. He had this massive herd of sheep. And he said, I need 1/10 of your herd. And the boy said, well, what if instead I just gave you 1/10 of what I find, right? So I gave her 1/10. I'll just give you another 1/10 of what I find. And he said, you cannot promise what you do not have, for it will impact your ability to implement now and the future, right now and into the coming future. That is the problem with programs like this. They make you to make this massive bet to think that something is happening. But the problem is you don't realize the level of commitment you made, right? And you think it's going to happen much faster than it realistically is. So what I want you to do moving into the future, when you make a bet on what education you want to go with, whatever that is, make the bet on yourself and finding the right education and choose the path to mastery. It's going to take around 16 to 18 months for you to make that job transition. Not because you just need to develop the skills, but you as a person typically need to develop some, right? If you're not great at communicating and showing how great you are, showing why someone should take a bet on you, you're not going to be able to get where you need to go. And that's where all of this starts. I hope that this helped. Stay tuned. I have a wild video coming up here soon talking about the value of an apprenticeship model, which is exactly what the future of all education is. It's going to replace Bloom Tech. It's going to replace all the universities. It is the future of everything we're going to learn. Keep an eye out. Do not forget to subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.